U.S., CNN military analyst, retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton. Cedric, good to have you on this morning. So the conservative U.S. estimates are somewhere in the range, in the middle of that range, 6,000, 7,000. That, as I keep noting to folks, is the sum total of U.S. personnel losses in Iraq and Afghanistan in 20 years. So Russia facing similar personnel losses in the span of 3 weeks in Ukraine. Plus, the U.S. military, and this goes back more than a week, so you have to assume this number has come up, estimates some 10% of Russian hardware either destroyed or inoperable. Where does that leave the Russian invasion force today?
Well, Jim, it's in dire straits. I would say the Russian military has some real problems, and it really shows a difference in philosophy between American forces who try to protect their forces, their service members as much as possible, and the Russians who don't have that as part of their doctrine. Not that Russian soldiers don't want to survive, they obviously do, but these casualty rates are exceptionally high for the kind of operation that they're conducting, and it harkens back to historical battles, all the way back to World War II, when you start seeing large numbers of casualties like this. Obviously, we're nowhere near those exact totals. Those were immense totals that, hit the millions during the course of that war. But in this particular case, with modern weapons and with the ability, you would think, to resupply forces under normal circumstances, this should not be happening.
Yeah. It's also interesting, I think, CNN has just confirmed, as we noted there, one of Russia's top paratrooper commanders was killed. The fact that on Russian state TV they're talking about the deaths within that unit, what does that tell you about not only who is there in country, but the fact that this is being broadcast, I think, sends an important message as well in Russia?
It does, Erica, and it's really interesting because this is couched in the Russian media as a peacekeeping mission and a denazification mission, using Putin's words. But what is really happening here is the elite forces of Russia, the parachute regiments. This would be something like losing a colonel in the 82nd Airborne Division. This is the kind of thing that really gets to the core of the professional military in Russia, and it's decimating their ranks, and it's basically a waste of their military talent.
Let me ask you this, because you can read this two ways, that this either cows Russia, right? The loss is so severe, it thinks about pulling back, or the opposite, and it pushes forward and harder and more ruthlessly. And the fact is, the latter seems to be the response so far, particularly as Russia has attacked more and more civilian targets, and then, of course, the U.S. taking the threat of a chemical weapons strike very seriously now. Where do you see, and how do you see Russia responding to this? Because folks have made the point, Putin cannot let the Russian military be embarrassed in Ukraine.
Yeah, that's the difficulty that he's put himself in. He's basically boxed himself in, and the Russian people along with him. And so I believe the response will be, let's toughen up, let's toughen our resolve. The colonel who was killed is a hero of Russia. Therefore, we will move forward in his name. That's the kind of message that I think they will, seek to disseminate among the population in Russia. And a lot of the population is going to buy that message. They're going to see these people who have given their lives in this operation as heroes, and they are going to celebrate them, and they're going to seek vengeance.
Yeah. We know the messaging from Ukraine far different for obvious reasons, but the president of Ukraine trying to appeal directly to Russian mothers, as we've heard in recent days, in amplifying these losses on the Russian side. What's interesting is we're not hearing a lot about Ukrainian losses, which I would think, Colonel, is also part of a very carefully planned message from Ukraine itself.
It is, and the Ukrainians are using, I think, the tenets of operational security. In other words, keep sensitive information out of the press as much as you possibly can. They're using that technique to great effect. Of course, they have some difficulty getting exact counts, I would think, of people in their service who've been killed or wounded. But on the other hand, they don't want to spread panic in their population, and they also want to make sure that nothing that they say diminishes the resolve of the Ukrainian forces and of course, the civilian population. So in this case, I think, Erica, what we're looking at is a kind of a dichotomy dichotomy. On the one hand, you have them revealing a lot about what's happening with Russian forces to great effect. The Russians responding, admitting to some of these losses. The Ukrainian side not admitting to too much, and it seems as if the Russians don't have that kind of knowledge of what's happening with the Ukrainian forces, or if they do, they're not publicizing it either for whatever reason.
Colonel Cedric Layton, I always appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet, Erica.